It's interesting what happens when you treat every little piece of a thing like it's everything.
Hey. Greetings, friends of the Infatuation. My name is Andrew Steinthal. I'm the co-founder of the Infatuation, along with being our Chief Partnerships Officer, which means that I do stuff with brands and help bring money into the business and things like that. And, you know, these times have been wild and crazy as we've all shifted into this quarantine lifestyle. And, you know, I'm really excited to be here for our first ever virtual experience known as the Infatuation Academy. Huge shout out to our friends at Dell and the makers of this very fine, snazzy XPS laptop. They've been amazing partners and are obviously with us helping present everything we're gonna do here tonight. And we're also gonna be doing a bunch of other sessions in the future coming up in the next couple of weeks. So pay attention. The whole idea of the Infatuation Academy, you know, teaming up with Dell to connect with some of the biggest entertainers, artists, musicians through cool interactive experiences like virtual conversations, digital workshops, you know, and tonight, you know, really connecting with our mindfulness. We're gonna have Jesse Israel from The Big Quiet. We're really excited to have on board. A little bit more about that in a second. But I mean, look, there's a couple key things to know about what's gonna be going on here tonight. The first and most important thing, other than Jesse and meditation, that's important too, obviously, but you're gonna have the opportunity to win XPS laptop. So you gotta follow some instructions to make sure that you can qualify to win one of these bad boys. But on the right-hand side of your monitor, you'll see a couple things. You're gonna have to register for an account so that you can properly contribute a question during the Q&A. You just ask a question in the chat box, again, on the right side of your screen. And you also retweet the Infatuation tweet that's up there. So everything should be on the right side of your screen right there. All you got to do to enter to win a snazzy XPS is make an account, enter a question during the Q&A session or during the meditation, but you're not really going to want to ask a question during the meditation, so you can wait till after. And then also retweet the Infatuation retweet. And then there's a little like trophy thing that you'll see right up there that will go on once you've done all the proper things to enter. And then we're gonna announce a winner after via email. So do that. And you know, look, I think as you think about meditation, right? Like right now feels more important than ever to explore new ways to find peace of mind. I mean, that's for damn sure. You know, and for this first Infatuation Academy class, a 101, if you will, it focuses on mindfulness and meditation, led by our good friend, Jesse Israel. Jesse's a meditation leader, public speaker, and founder of The Big Quiet, company dedicated to giving people the tools they need to find balance in their everyday lives. Jesse actually just got off the road with Oprah. He was on Oprah's WW tour, leading mass meditations to thousands of people. I was at the Barclays Center show, which was wild. Just like watching him on stage, you know, watching this, going from a small thing that started as Medi Club to like a really large thing was a proud moment as a friend, but also a really cool and powerful moment as well. So without further ado, I'm gonna let Jesse take it away, and I will see you guys back for the Q&A in a little bit. All right, thanks.
Thanks so much, Andrew. And thank you so much, Dell and the Infatuation team, for having me. I've been really looking forward to this and sharing some of these tools and some of these ideas that, like Andrew said, feel extra important right now. So like Andrew mentioned, I'm the founder of The Big Quiet. We host mass meditations with thousands of people at iconic places throughout the world. I teach meditation. I do a lot of work with executives and with different cultural icons and leaders. I'm really passionate about this stuff. And what we're gonna talk about tonight is meditation through the lens of two fundamental pieces to our happiness as humans. That first piece is in regards to self-care, which is the idea of going inwards to take care of ourselves so we can be the best of who we are. And the second piece is through social care, which is the idea of getting clear about how we can meaningfully and purposefully contribute to the world around us. So after we talk briefly about these two concepts, we'll then get into a meditation that ties both of these together. And after the Q&A, I'll also share a short breathing technique that anybody can use at any time that's really helpful, especially for moments of anxiety or moments of high stress. I know so many of us are going through that right now. So in regards to self-care and social care, let's start by looking at self-care. And I find that a really meaningful way to make sense of why taking care of ourselves is so important right now is to really get into the science of stress. And I'm not going to get into this for too much. I know that the last thing we probably want to talk about is stress when so many of us are feeling it right now. But I find it's really helpful for us to make sense of what it does to the body and how it happens so we can solve for it. So I like to look at the concept of stress through the lens of actually how we existed as humans when we lived in tribes as hunters and gatherers. So for the great majority of our time on this earth, we lived in tribes. It's only a very recent modern phenomenon, just a little blip on the timeline of us existing for 1 million+ years as humans that we haven't lived in tribes. So when we lived in tribes and we were hunters and gatherers, we had to go out to get our own food. So if we were out on the path going to get some lunch and we were looking for whatever animal we were gonna prepare for our meal, and a saber-toothed tiger jumped out on the path, a series of physiological changes would occur in the body when we're faced with this tiger. The first thing is that the body starts to release cortisol. And this is that chemical in our bloodstream that issues a sense of warning, of emergency. It's what triggers the stress reaction in the body. And it tells the body, hey, pay attention. It's time to either fight or flee, right? It turns on the fight or flight response. And the fight or flight response is incredibly helpful when we're faced with something that could potentially eat us for lunch. A bunch of other things also happen when we experience the fight or flight. Our muscles tense up, our digestive systems and our reproductive systems fully turn off, just so we have extra energy to either fight or to flee. And the body goes into survival mode. So again, when we're faced with a tiger, this is really helpful. Now today, right, thousands of years later, what we see is that because we've evolved so quickly because of technology and just how fast our lives move around us, we haven't biologically evolved out of knowing when the body really needs to be in fight or flight response or not. So what I mean by that is when we get a bad email from maybe an aggressive colleague and we get that feeling in our stomach, like the blood starts to boil. I know everyone knows what I'm talking about. That's a fight or flight response going off, right? When we get in an argument with our partner or roommate about not getting the right groceries and it turns into a full-fledged argument, this is fight or flight. And same if we're driving or we're in an Uber and someone's just slamming their horn at us, we're just sitting there in traffic, right? Fight or flight is that reaction that we feel in the body. So although these situations are not life-threatening at all, the body doesn't know the difference. And that same stress trigger, that same fight or flight response goes off. So what's happening today, when we live in a modern city or a modern suburb, we're experiencing over 25 of these stress triggers and these fight or flight triggers in a single day. And when we're living in a time like right now with this pandemic, these fight or flight responses can even be heightened. So what's so important for us to understand is that when our bodies are in this constant state of stress, the body starts to get exhausted. It starts to move into modes where we experience more anxiety than we really need to help us to stay alive. And what we find is that the immune system can start to get shot. We can feel blocked from our creativity, from our ability to connect with ourselves, to connect with other people. It becomes really tough to sleep at night. And we're seeing a lot of things like how stress impacts our health. Right? 90% of doctor visits are the result of stress. So when we look at meditation, we look at self-care, what's happening when we practice meditation, when we slow down, when we get quiet, even for just a couple of moments every day, is we're turning off this fight or flight response. And what happens when the fight or flight response turns off, when we're practicing meditation, we turn on the relaxation response. This is also known as the parasympathetic nervous system. So when this occurs, the body has all the opposite physiological reactions that occur when we're in fight or flight. So instead of cortisol pumping through the blood, we have serotonin and dopamine. And these are the chemicals in our blood that allow us to feel a sense of well-being, a sense of happiness. our muscles loosen up. We find that our digestive systems and our reproductive systems strengthen. We become extra strong in regards to how our body operates. Our immune system boosts. We start to sleep better at night because the body knows it's not actually under attack. And as a result of the body becoming stronger, becoming healthier, we experience less blocks. The way that we react to stress, the way that we react to anxiety, the way that that we find that we maybe would address challenging situations starts to shift. We start to become more thoughtfully responsive in the face of things that used to totally just freak us out. And with less blocks in our system, we start to get clearer about how we want to show up in the world. We start to become more discerning of how we can lean into purpose, how we can meaningfully and effectively and fulfilling way show up in work, in our relationships, in our creativity. And when we're prioritizing our self-care in this way, especially through the lens of meditation and slowing down and getting quiet and bringing our body to a regular place of turning off the fight or flight and going into relaxation response, we start to get really clear about how we can meaningfully contribute to the world, how we can meaningfully be of service to other people and to the problems that the world really needs solving for, which I think has so much to do with a sense of fulfillment and purpose in our lives. So it's a good segue into this second piece, social care. So when I look at suffering, and I look at this through the lens of my own suffering, which I experience all the time, even though I lead big meditations, I notice that when I'm usually experiencing a sense of suffering, it's because I'm worrying about something in the past or something in the future, or I'm feeling a sense of lack, a sense of not enoughness, like I'm behind or not good enough in some way around something in the present moment. So what I've noticed is that when we shift our perspective from I'm not enough in this way, or I'm worried about this thing in the past, or I'm freaked out about this thing in the future, and it's all about me, and I shift my perspective to, well, actually, how can I think about how I can meaningfully be of service to something in the world around me right now? We go from this lack perspective to this contribution perspective, to this place of I'm not enough, to this place of, ooh, I can actually contribute, I can give myself to something. And when we contribute to something greater than ourselves, the brain actually releases oxytocin. And this is the chemical that allows us, similarly to serotonin and dopamine, to feel a sense of well-being, a sense of goodness. So what I like to think about when it comes to self-care is if I'm taking care of myself, if I have the space and the perspective to feel clear, I can then think about how I can meaningfully and purposefully be of service to something else in the world around me. And when I have these two pieces in place, right, taking care of myself and then meaningfully showing up for and being of service to other people, and I'm not just talking about community service, this can relate to work, this can relate to relationships, this can relate to family, to friends, this can also relate to volunteering and community service, right? But just thinking about how when we're taking care of ourselves, we can meaningfully contribute to other people and other problems in the world around us, we start to create a really healthy and powerful cycle that allows us to maximize our impact in the world. And this is what I love about wellness. It's not just to do stuff like this, feel bliss, look happy all the time. What I really love about wellness, what I really love about this space is that when we take care of ourselves, we can become instruments of service for what the world needs around us. We can really step into purpose. And this is my great hope for people when they practice this stuff. It's not just about experiencing less stress. It's not just about being more productive. It's about being clear about how we can show up meaningfully in the world. So with all that being said, let's take these two concepts and work them into today's meditation. And for those of you that have meditated before, awesome. This will be, I think, a great opportunity for you to play with some new concepts. And for those of you that are brand new to meditation, you're in good hands. This is totally something that's great for people that have never done this before. I'll guide you through it. What I'll ask before we go into it and close our eyes is for you to just be easy with yourself. The thing that I hear most commonly in regards to meditation is that people will say, Jesse, meditation doesn't work for me, or meditation's not for me. My mind's always wandering. And what I always like to remind people of is that is totally natural. Our minds wandering doesn't mean that we're bad at meditation. It means that we're human beings. We still experience the benefits of meditation, even when our eyes are closed and the mind is wandering. It may not feel as gratifying as when we feel relaxed or zen, or start to feel that blissfulness that we may feel sometimes when we meditate. But it's just as important. And what I like to remind people of is, if you've noticed that your mind is wandering in the practice, just very gently, very effortlessly and lovingly, just bring your attention back to my instruction and understand that this just may happen. You're noticing my instruction, the mind wanders. Very gently and lovingly come back to my voice, the mind wanders. And if this is the process you have for the whole time, that's perfect. You're still having a great practice. It's really important to let the body unstress and practice in that way. And for those of you that find that throughout this meditation, you get more relaxed, or maybe you get emotional, maybe you get sleepy, that's also totally fine and something to embrace and welcome. So without further ado, let's get into our practice. So what I'd like for you to do is to get comfortable in your seat. For this practice, it's great to have back support, so you can sit in a chair, on a couch, put pillows behind your back. You can sit on your bed or on the floor, up against the wall or the headboard of your bed. But the idea here is to get comfortable and to go ahead and close your eyes. And for the first part of our practice, just take a moment to notice the sounds of the space that you're in. Maybe it's totally quiet. Maybe you're hearing sounds of air conditioners or heaters. Maybe you're hearing sounds from outside of the room, from other rooms, from the street. But just taking this moment to slow down and just notice the sounds that are always around us, but that we never really stop to pay attention to. Now bringing your attention to your breath. Just notice your breath. Notice if your breathing is shallow or if it's deep. Notice how your chest just very gently rises and falls as you breathe at your own natural rhythm. And giving your body permission to slow down, and giving yourself permission to have whatever experience you're going to have for the next 15 minutes or so. And now take a big breath into your belly, filling up your belly, air into your chest, and then letting it all out. Now another big breath, air into your belly, air expanding into your lungs, and continuing to sip in as much air as you can. And then letting it all out, allowing the body to relax. And one last big breath into your belly, fully filling up your chest, your lungs expanding, taking in all the air that you're able to, and holding it for a moment, and then sipping in more air, and then audibly letting it all out. And now going back to your natural breath, and letting the body start to downshift, and the nervous system starting to relax. And bring your attention to your toes. And see if you can notice the sensation of the skin of your toes against your socks or your shoes or whatever your toes may be touching. Notice the bottoms of your feet. Notice your ankles, your shins. Noticing your knees, your thighs. Noticing your hips. And allow gravity to pull you down into your seat, allowing your body to feel heavy. And notice your lower back, and your middle back. Noticing your shoulders and where your neck meets your shoulders. And allow yourself to release any tension you may be feeling there. Moving your attention up the back of your neck, into the top of your head. Noticing your scalp. Noticing your eyebrows. And your cheekbones. Noticing your jawline. And your lips. Notice the weight of your tongue in your mouth. Remembering and knowing right now that several of us are here together, allowing ourselves to feel whatever we're feeling. And whatever may be coming up for you, just allow yourself to feel it, to be with it, to accept it. And as you notice the sensations in your heart, simultaneously notice your breath. And very lovingly and gently bringing your attention back to your breath and the sensations in your heart. We remember that love is a choice, that in the face of fear and in so much discomfort, we can always go back into our hearts to reconnect with love, with the power that comes from love. And we remember that taking care of ourselves, treating ourselves is critical to then be able to look out for others, to be able to contribute in meaningful ways to the world around us. We've taken a final moment of gratitude for the fact that we have Wi-Fi and phones and computers where we can connect in this way. Gratitude for the shelter over our heads, for our ability to access food and water. Gratitude for our beating hearts. Gratitude for the ability to breathe. And gratitude for the gift that is life. Remembering that we're all in this together. And you can start to wiggle your toes and wiggle your fingers. If it feels good to you, you can start to stretch your arms out, your limbs out. You can stretch your arms over your head. You can move your head and neck over your shoulders, just slowly bringing the blood back into the body after slowing down the system and connecting with our emotions. It's really taking our time. We'll take one final breath into the belly, up into the chest, and letting it all out. And slowly opening your eyes as you feel ready. And as you come back to the screen, as you come back into this moment, if it feels good to you, you can chime in on the chat box to share how you're feeling in this moment.
Oh, we're back. Got it. Thanks. Was really zenned out over here. That was great, Jesse. We're back and up and running, and Thank you so much for doing that. So we're going to do Q&A now for a bit. We got some amazing questions. Thank you everybody for participating. Also, if you're late to the game here, you can log in to the right side of your screen and ask a question in the chat area. And then also if you retweet that Infatuation retweet on the top there, you can also enter to win a brand new snazzy Dell XPS. So we're going to get started on some cues to start. Let's see, what should we start with? Carly asked, is it better to start or end your day with meditation?
So I think that both are great. I personally make sure that I always start my day with meditation. What I find is that if you're only able to practice one, do it at the start of the day, because we're a lot more likely to make it happen. And what I recommend that people do, and this is what I do, is the first thing that I do when I get up is meditate. So I'll maybe use the bathroom real quick, freshen up. And then the second I'm out of the door of the bathroom, I'm sitting down and meditating, even if it's just for a couple minutes. So my practice is 20 minutes, but when I first started, it was just a few minutes every day right after I'd leave the bathroom. And starting to build a routine of sitting down to close our eyes every morning after we leave the bathroom starts to get our bodies in rhythm, especially if we're able to do that for about 3 weeks to about a month. The body starts to get into a rhythm of knowing that it has this thing to look forward to. It strengthens and grounds the body and mind before the day starts. And it's really a meaningful way to go into our days. And if we're able to practice before we go to sleep, especially meditations like mindfulness practices that are designed to help us with sleep, those are great too. And the meditation or the breathing exercise that I'm going to share at the very end of the session today, which is really simple and just takes a couple seconds, is a great one that you can do right before you go to sleep. And one other thing I just want to chime in on in regards to this, because I think it's so important, is for those of you that are able to and willing to try, turning your phone off into airplane mode before you go to sleep. And in the morning, if you're able to actually not turn it off of airplane mode until you've had some time to meditate or just had some slow time for yourself, and not check your phone first thing in the morning in bed. This is such a meaningful way to start your day, and it can really change the course of your day and the energy of the day.
I need to do that. I don't do that. There's no chance of that. That's my biggest problem. Piggybacking off of that, Justin was wondering if you have any favorite apps for guided meditation.
My favorite app for guided meditation, and this is a free one, and it's fully free the whole way through, is called One Giant Mind. It's the number One Giant Mind. And what's so great about it is that it will really work with you to help you understand how to have your own practice, eventually being off the app and practicing on your own if you want that option. And my teacher and mentor, Johnny Pollard, created that app and guides it. It's really popular in Australia, and it's becoming more popular here in the US. The number One Giant Mind.
Very cool. Cow, this is a good one for this exact moment, but Cameron was wondering, given the fact that we're all a little high on anxiety these days, is there a specific type of meditation that helps with anxiety?
Yeah, so pretty much all eyes closed meditation practices are really going to help. And Cameron, if you were here at the start of the session, I talked a little bit about the fight or flight response and how our bodies are just constantly reacting to things that create a sense of stress, mainly because of the amount of information and input and things we're just processing on a daily basis. So when we're able to just take some time to close our eyes and to bring our presence to our bodies, noticing our breath, noticing our bodies, this will begin to shift the nervous system out of fight or flight and into relaxation, and will help with reducing stress. A particular, the practice that I'm going to share after the Q&A is really great for this, because breathing exercises, even really simple ones like the one that we're going to do, are great for just instant, in the moment, turning the stress and anxiety down for a moment. So stick around for that, and we'll practice that together, and you'll be able to use that technique whenever, anywhere.
Cool. Adam has a good question. I relate to this personally. How do you know if you're meditating properly? And what is the feeling you should have after you meditate to know that you meditated properly?
That's such a great question. And the way that I'll start by answering that is by acknowledging that there's lots of different styles of meditation, right? So just keep in mind that there are lots of different techniques and different ways to practice, and it's going to differ based on the style of meditation that you're practicing. I'll use the one that we just did as an example. The practice that we just did was about noticing our bodies, noticing our breath. When we're practicing something like this, there are lots of different experiences that can happen, and all of them are a sign of us practicing properly. So one example of what we may feel when we're meditating, where we're noticing our bodies, right? Notice, like we just did a body scan, where we're noticing from head to toe. So it's really common in a practice like that for the mind to wander, or for us to feel restless, think what's next, or bugging out about something that happened earlier in the day. So this is really common. And as long as once we've noticed that the mind has wandered, we're very gently and easily, lovingly bringing our attention back to noticing the body, that's proper, right? Even if the whole practice is your mind wandering, and then you realize it and you very gently come back to your noticing your body or your breath, and that's the whole thing, that's great. That's a really common experience to have in meditation. And sometimes we'll have the experience where when we're noticing our body and our breath, we start to get really relaxed, or we start to feel a sense of happiness. You know, people use the word a sense of bliss when we practice, right? This is common too when we practice. Sometimes we feel really sleepy. Sleepiness when we practice is just the body releasing fatigue, right? When we practice meditation, the body's repairing itself. Sometimes when the body's repairing itself, we just feel the goodness, the serotonin and the dopamine that moves through our veins. Sometimes when the body's repairing itself, it's releasing fatigue and we get really sleepy. And sometimes when the body's repairing itself, we're unstressing. The mind is letting stuff out. It's actually a really healthy process. So it's really just about understanding that there are lots of different ways to properly experience meditation, as long as you're being easy with yourself and returning back to the technique and to the practice. And that's such a great question. I'm so glad you asked it.
Love me some serotonin. All right.
You know you do.
Adelina has a good one. I've tried several times to meditate, but my mind can't stop racing. How do I get in the right mindset?
So the I would say the right mindset is what we just talked about in this last question. The right mindset is being open and willing and okay to be with whatever comes up during the practice. And it's really about letting go of this, I would call it a misconception, that when we meditate, we're supposed to not be thinking, that our minds are supposed to be totally still. That happens sometimes, and it's a beautiful experience. But so often that's not what happens, and that's okay. So it's really just about having a mindset that we are going to allow ourselves to have the experience that we're going to have. And as long as we're returning to the technique when we realize that the mind has wandered, we're good. And what I think you'll see is that if you're able to be easy on yourself and understand that we have different experiences when we practice, we can start to fall into these more relaxed states, sometimes more regularly, because I'd say that the best way to get ourselves to not do something is to constantly be thinking and pushing ourselves to not do the thing, right? It's like the more we try not to think, the more we're going to think. So when we're able to take an attitude of, I'm cool with what happens here, I'm just going to return to my breath or body or technique, we get into a much more natural state with the practice.
Cool. All right, Cherie, how do I keep the meditation feeling going all through the day? How do I tap into it at any moment?
Oh, that's a great question. So there are two ways I'll speak to that. The first is that for those of us that really commit to daily meditation practice, meaning we're regularly sitting down and practicing some form of a technique, what starts to happen with daily practice is that the body starts to shift into a constant relaxation response. And I'm not talking about, I don't care about the world anymore. Not that type of stone type of relaxation response. We start to get in a place where the fight or flight only turns on when it really needs to, only when we're really actually under attack. Otherwise, we can discern from when things are stressful and when things are, just things that we're reacting to. So what starts to happen when we have a daily practice is we start to move into a more constant state of that feeling good, of that feeling of acceptance and responsiveness to the world as opposed to reactive and freaked out, right? So daily meditation is a great way to start to build that. It takes time to feel into that, but it happens when we practice regularly. And the other way to do that, which I find really helpful, because look, I've been practicing meditation for 10 years. I teach it, I do it with big groups. I still have my days where I feel stressed, where I feel anxious too. You know, this is not a cure-all. It's helped me tremendously with my own stuff, but it's not a cure-all. So when I have days or when I have moments where I'm really yearning for that connection or that groundedness that we feel from meditation, I have a little practice that I do that I think you may like, where I just notice my toes. That's it. In the moment that I'm in, I just bring my attention to my toes. And this is really helpful when I find that I'm losing focus or when my mind's wandering in a meeting or something. I just bring my attention to my toes. And the simple practice of bringing our present awareness to our bodies really tunes us into the present moment. And it can be as simple as that, as noticing your toes.
That's pretty good. I might pick up that toes move. I think this probably plays off that really well. Rochelle asked, are there best practices for a short meditation, i.e. breaks in between work?
Yeah, so breathing exercises are really good. I know I keep referencing the one that I'm going to share with you after the Q&A. I don't mean to hype it up because it's really simple, but the one that I'll share with you guys in a few moments is so great for right before you go into a meeting, or right before you're about to have a stressful Zoom call, or if you're someone that manages teams and you want to get your team really connected before you go into a challenging moment or before a brainstorm, you can use this technique. And it's really just a simple breathing technique where we move into our bodies, we notice our breath. And I'll share it with you in a couple moments.
Right, so Carrie asked a question here that you just answered, so we don't need to answer it again. But the question was, is it feasible to meditate after one of those triggering emails, one of those lower lift options we can do in a short amount of time at our desks, AKA our kitchen tables these days? So that's going to be
yes.
exercises again.
Yeah, we'll do that in a sec.
Meredith wants to know, if I'm a beginner to meditating, how many minutes would you recommend to start practicing every day?
Well, I would say that the best way to address this is to follow the instruction of whatever style of meditation that you're practicing. So one thing that I really recommend is, instead of just saying, all right, I'm just going to close my eyes and meditate, which can be kind of confusing and challenging, it would be to instead learn a technique. And maybe that means downloading a free app like One Giant Mind, or accessing a 5-minute meditation in Calm or the Headspace app. Maybe it means taking a virtual course or learning from an instructor, right? There's so many different ways we can access meditation. But my suggestion to you is to have some form of guidance or some form of an instruction to give you some support around what you're practicing, and follow how long they suggest that you meditate for. I think that there are some great 5-minute meditations on apps like Calm and Headspace that are great starting points. I mentioned that I would practice meditation for 3 minutes a day. When I first learned, I learned through a free meditation course at a Shambhala center. And I practiced for 3 minutes a day for the first month, and then I upped it. And I later learned Vedic meditation, which is a style of meditation that you can only learn in person. So it's maybe a little less relevant right now. But I think starting for a few minutes a day with an instruction that's supporting you is awesome. And don't feel like it needs to be some huge commitment from the start. You can really work your way up from there.
Cool. All right, last one, then we'll do the much hyped breathing exercise. Jacob, this is a good one. How do you suggest starting my own group-led meditation? How do I spread the message and learn more to lead better?
I love that. I think that's so important. And part of what's so exciting about, I would say, if we choose to see some of the positive in this very trying, challenging time we're in right now, is that people really are yearning for leadership, and people are really yearning for spaces where we can feel and go through and transform and evolve and be human together. So I think that starting meditation groups right now are really important. And the first thing that I would suggest to you is to sort of let go of any idea that it needs to be, some huge success with tons of people showing up, right? It can be really easy for us as humans before we start something to be like, it needs to be perfect. It needs to be this certain way for it to be a success. So the first thing I would suggest is just go into it with a simple intention. If this group that I create creates value for at least one other person, this is an awesome first start. That's really just like keep the bar low but meaningful in that way. So if you're able to just get a couple people, 2, 3, 5, who knows, maybe you get 10 or 20 people to come be a part of this, as long as you're having that moment together, you're having the space to connect together, that's awesome. So keep the bar low. The other thing that I would say is know, and I talk a lot about this at corporations, know that we are all capable of community leadership. It does not require a business skill set. You don't have to raise capital. You don't have to be charismatic, right? You don't have to have maybe more traditional leader qualities. All that's required for us to gather people right now, especially at a time when we need each other, right? Probably more than ever. All that's required is an invitation and some clarity around why you're gathering people. So if for you it's, hey, I want to have space where we can get together on a Zoom channel, slow our bodies down, meditate for a couple minutes, and then open our eyes and talk about and kind of check in what's going on in our lives and just have that support group, right? If you're clear about that, you can invite a couple people into that. That's a really, really meaningful form of service right now, and something that I think you would find helpful and incredibly fulfilling. That's how MediClub started, by the way, and MediClub is what the Big Quiet was born out of. You know, and when we did the Oprah, when we brought the Big Quiet to Oprah's tour, and we went to the Barclays Center stop in Brooklyn, which Andrew mentioned. Andrew was there in the audience. That was a 5-year. The next day was our 5-year anniversary from the very first meditation gathering that we had with 20 people at my buddy's apartment in Soho, and it started with a really similar purpose. And by the way, I never led groups or did meditation stuff before. I used to run a record label, so you're very capable of this. And I think just beginning with clear intention and sending out a couple invites is an awesome first step. And I hope you'll keep me posted on how it unfolds. You can shoot me a DM on Instagram. It's my full name.
Nice. Very cool. All right, let's do some breathing.
Great. So the much hyped up practice that I've mentioned is incredibly simple. And this is why I love it so much, because you are all capable of doing this at any moment. And it's great to be used, especially at those moments where we're feeling high anxiety, where the heart's beating, where we're feeling that discomfort, when we need to just have a quick reboot of bringing the nervous system and the body down to a more settled place. This is a really effective science-backed tool. So first I'll explain it, then we'll do it, and then it's yours. So the way that it works is we take 3 big breaths into the belly and we hold when the breath is full. And it's similar to what we did at the start of the meditation. So before we do it, it'll look like taking a big breath in and getting all the air into your lungs fully. And when you've taken in all the air that you can, you hold it. And then you let it out. We're going to do that 3 times. And then after the 3rd time, we just breathe naturally, noticing how our chest rises and falls. And this whole practice is less than a minute. But if we want to, we can do it for several minutes by just continuing to notice our chests. You can do it standing and you can do it sitting. So you can do it in any moment. You can do it with your eyes closed or with your eyes open. So since we did an eyes closed meditation before, let's do this one open and I'll take you through it. And to begin, what we do is we take a big breath into the belly, fill up your chest, take in all the air that you can, hold it, and then let it out. We do this again. Big breath into the belly, up into your chest. Once you get all the air and you hold it, maybe sip in a bit more air, let it all out. One more big breath, filling up the belly, up into your chest, holding it for a moment, and letting it out. And we sit for a second and just notice how your chest rises and falls as you breathe at your own natural pace. And that's it. And you can stay with noticing the breath for as long as you want. Personally, I prefer doing it with my eyes closed, but if you're in an environment where you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes, it's still really effective. Like, you can do this at work. And like I mentioned, this is a really great way to start meetings, especially for high stress times. If you lead teams or even family members before a meal, it's a great practice. And I think you'll notice a shift when you do it. And I hope it's helpful for you.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being here today. This was really fun, and I learned some things. I'm sure a bunch of other people learned some things as well. Thank you, everybody, for being a part of this and contributing your questions and participating. It's really great. One of you is going to win this Nazi XPS, not this one, but you're going to win one of them.
I have one. It's dope.
Yeah, there you go. And just massive shout out to Dell and all of their teams, the MediaCom team, the Dell brand team. You know, these are interesting times, and this whole series was supposed to be an experiential IRL series that, you know, when everything went down, we quickly pivoted and went virtual. So this is the first one of these. We're doing 5 more. So there's going to be a bunch more of these with really cool talent. So definitely stay tuned, and we'll see you again soon. All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Infatuation. Thanks, Dell.
It's interesting what happens when you treat every little piece of a thing like it's not just one thing, but everything. Because when each part does everything better than ever, imagine what you can do with the sum of those parts. The new Dell XPS.